In this section, we went over all of the Node modules that we hadn't previously talked about in the earlier sections. We began by talking about some deprecated ones that you really shouldn't use or you should at least avoid: Punycode, domain, and everything happening in the deprecated API section. Then we talked about TTY and how, while it does have interesting events that you can bind to, you'd be unlikely to have a reason to use it directly. And we talked about ESM modules, how they're currently experimental and not yet supporting import, which kind of makes them illogical to use at this point. We talked about the tracing module and the inspector module and how you'll need third-party tools to use those. And we talked about internationalization as well as C++ add-ons and C++ add-ons and API, and how you'll need to compile a new version of Node to make use out of those modules in any significant way. After that, we moved on to case studies of a few specific modules: HTTP2, where we created a client and server; VM, where we ran arbitrary code inside of a virtual machine and modified the global execution context; and we did UDP Datagram, where we created a client and server; and then Net and TLS, where we did the same. We then moved on to the REPL module, where we showed how easy it was to create a REPL, and we used async hooks to show how you can track the lifecycle of asynchronous processes. So at this point, that is all the modules. If you choose to do a deeper dive on any of the modules that we explored here, just make sure you're using ones that aren't too experimental. And if you are interested in using experimental modules like async hooks, that might be a good reason to start exploring something beyond the current LTS of Node. The LTS is going to be stable, but the newer versions of Node that are currently under active development might have resolved some of the issues that you will encounter when you use the experimental modules. With that, we can move on to the final lecture.